Live from Waterstones Piccadilly, the Spontaneity Shop presents the Waterstones Guilty Feminist Book Club with Deborah Francis-White, guest co-host Jessica Fostekew, and our very special guest Lauren Elkin, talking about Scaffolding and the Inseparables. This is The Guilty Feminist, the podcast in which we explore our noble goals as 21st century feminists and the hypocrisies and insecurities which undermine them. Except this is The Guilty Feminist Waterstones Book Club. I'm Deborah Francis-White. With me is Jessica Fostekew, and we are talking with Lauren Elkin about her book, Scaffolding. Her essays on art, literature and culture have appeared in the London Review of Books, the New York Times, Granta and Harper's, among others. She's also an award-winning translator, most recently of Simone de Beauvoir's previously unpublished novel, The Inseparables. Please welcome Lauren Elkin! Lauren, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
I'm very, very excited to have you. And we're very excited to be discussing your book, Scaffolding, and Simone de Beauvoir's The Inseparables, which you translated.
I did.
How clever do you feel?
How what, sorry?
How clever do you feel to be able to translate Simone de Beauvoir?
So endlessly clever. Every day I wake up and say, I translated Simone de Beauvoir.
I would absolutely do that.
I love that. I once met a little girl in a playground. I was there with my child. I wasn't just there. And I think she was about 6 or 7, and she's just doing all these spinning around, all the bits and bobs there. And my son was quite a bit younger and kind of looking at her like, wow. And she went, there's no need to look at me like that. This is actually my talent. And that's you with writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
I mean, people often say to me, oh, you do lots of different things, but nothing as highbrow as translate Simone de Beauvoir.
No, we've not translated Simone de Beauvoir.
I think it's safe to say, Jess, that I will die not translating a word of Simone de Beauvoir.
I'm more likely to run a marathon than I am. And I hate that. I hate all of that.
Absolutely.
Sorry, any runners here.
But Lauren, you are a bit French, is that not correct?
Well, I was born and raised in New York. My parents are here in the front row.
Hey!
Hello. And I moved to France to study abroad in the late 90s and then went back and forth until finally moving there for good in 2004. And so I became a French citizen over time rather than... one is not born, but one becomes a French citizen.
Made, not born.
Yeah, that's a very funny Simone de Beauvoir illusion for those who got it and laughed loudly. Well done. For those who didn't, that's one is
why
not
we're here.
born a woman but made a woman.
Don't feel guilty. It's why we're here.
The second sex. And I only know that because I've been doing my homework and reminding myself about Simone de Beauvoir. But you would say you're a Parisian now?
I am, even though I'm a Parisian who is living in London at the moment, alas.
Yeah,
Hélas.
I mean, all the best ones do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be sure.
Here, there, and everywhere. I was so delighted by your book, Scaffolding.
Yes, me too.
This is your first official novel, is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't read like a first novel, does it?
No.
It reads like the writing of a very, very, very serious literary person, but also it was very gripping and entertaining, and I was turning the pages very quickly.
Yeah.
Also, lots of short, like, interludes, or like a diary. Sometimes you just get a few lines, which if you are struggling with a contemporary attention span, you will
That's such a nice way of putting.
You will find this a very easy read because you can pick it up and put it down. You can dip in, you can dip in and dip out. But interestingly, because of that, you won't.
Yeah, it's very
That's the
Moorish.
thing.
What a clever thing. Did you know you were doing
so
that?
Clever.
Because you think, it's only...
Read a
that's
tiny
only,
bit.
That chap's
I'll
only a
just read another
page.
tiny bit now.
I've got time for one more... I've got time for one more page. In that same way that when you think, I haven't got time to watch a film tonight, I'll watch something from a series, and then you watch 6 episodes of the series, and you could watch 2 full-length films. You've done that in your book.
Oh, amazing.
That is 100%
very, very
what you've
clever.
done.
Exactly,
so
really
pleased.
clever, but
It's
I did miss a few
Moorish.
stops.
Bus
stops.
Did you miss bus stops, did you?
Yeah.
Did you have
I
to
missed
get off
bus
and
stops.
walk? She missed bus stops for you.
Oh,
that,
no,
I
thank
think.
It's worse
you.
for me because I can't drive at the moment.
Oh, that's the
I've broken
sweetest
arm.
thing.
That is the greatest compliment an author can ever have.
Oh no, totally.
That someone missed 2 bus stops.
I nearly missed a tube stop reading Miranda July. Yeah. I will say she's the last one.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that you miss bus stops. I was at home for most of my reading, so and my flat stayed pretty much where it was. Although, interestingly, the theme of your book or it really...
Did it?
Or the device of your book, I should say, rather than theme. The device of your book made me think about who's lived in my flat before me. And I started to think about the ghosts of who was there. And I want to try and find out who lived there before me. And when I go upstairs, because my flat used to be, the top floor used to be an attic when we got there, we turned it into a loft. So whenever I go up there, I think, no one lived up here, or did they? You know, did anyone hide up here? Did anyone have a family member that lived up here? And I think about it all the time now. I'm like, who was in this room? And I know the walls we've knocked down legally. Well, not legally, but we've told them now, and they said it was fine.
Yeah.
Did you not find any knickknacks when you moved in that gave you clues about who they were?
Well, I know the man who...
Every now and again, we'll still find an item behind a radiator.
Really? What kind?
Big pants. Presumably had been drying there, but like a lot of really enormous, excellently enormous, kind of parachute usable underkecks. Some intense religious figurines.
Oh,
yeah, and some serious philately.
Philately? What's that?
Stamp collecting.
Oh, philately. Oh, right. I thought philately. Yeah.
Like binder upon binder.
And they've been left there.
They've been left there, and they could be worth something, but it feels like you can't try and sell that. It feels like a ghost will come for you.
You can't sell
even
it.
though pretty confident.
I want you to do an Edinburgh
very
show.
much still alive. Yeah,
I want you to do an Edinburgh show
40s.
of the characters that you believed lived there before you, that were into stamp collecting and
It was an
really had
adult
religious
brother
names.
and sister, which always waves a few amber to red flags when it. Yeah, there is a novel in that one.
It's making us think about this.
Yeah.
You have to think about if you're not in somewhere that's brand new, and in London you normally aren't.
Yeah.
There's all of these ghosts, and I loved, Lauren, as well. I should just praise it, just if in case anybody hasn't read it or is buying it tonight. Just give us a cheer if you've read it. Just give us a cheer if you've bought it but not yet read it.
Ooh.
A cheer. I know you're in a bookstore, but this is a podcast. No one can see your hands. Cheer if you've read it. Cheer if you've bought it but not read it. Cheer if you're in the middle of reading it and we're going to spoil it. Your mother and father. You haven't finished it. We were just saying how Moorish it was. It's interesting. It's good you haven't...
They just got here. They just got it.
Oh, they just got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say, it's good that you haven't got to the part about the evil dad yet then. I'm kidding. If you love Lauren and you love books, but you have not yet bought this book, give us a cheer. Great. Those are the people you sell to after the show, okay? But anybody can get their book signed after the show. Tom's told me if we get on with this part, which we have so far not. So just to précis, the first part is about a woman, Anna, who is living in Paris. She's Parisian and American, but feels Parisian, similar to you. And not based on...
Well, she's French-American. She grew up in France.
A French-American, okay. So her husband has gone to London and she has had a miscarriage. And so she is recovering from that, and she describes herself as having cling film days where it's like she's trapped under cling film and she can't move, which was so relatable. And I've now started saying I feel like I need a cling film day.
Ooh,
yeah.
lovely.
And it's just that sort of sometimes you're just like, I'm exhausted, or something mentally is stopping me. I've got ADHD. Sometimes I find things more difficult.
Oh, no, that's a real thing.
Yeah, no, I've come to understand that. She develops a friendship with Clementine, who is a neighbour, and there is a sort of a queerness, a queer inquiry, a queer curiosity.
Chemistry.
Yeah, and a sort of a feeling that we're getting from Anna, who's telling the story, who's like writing a journal. And then we cut back. So this is all happening before the pandemic, but not long before. And then we cut back to the 60s. 72. So around the Erica Jong, in fact, last time we did Erica Jong, exactly around the time that Fear of Flying was written and published. And it's this sort of time of feminism and sexual liberation. And then we cut back again and we catch up with
what Anna is doing now, what Clementine is doing now, and how things might have evolved and changed there. Is that a good précis?
Yeah, great.
Except that it's the 70s, not the 60s, but it feels 60s. Early 70s feels 60s, doesn't it? No one agrees with that. Okay.
It's about the kind of like impact of the 60s.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
how are people living after? Did it make a big difference? Is it, you know, has it had any kind of lasting influence, or is it just kind of a hangover?
Absolutely. And it's quite I feel like it's quite a French book, in as much as, you know, a French film that's got that kind of, always got that kind of latent, sexy, open relationship, curiosity, and, you know, wondering what's behind the peeling wallpaper.
There's no geeks in it. There's no like dorks in it. Everyone's pretty cool.
Everyone's kind of...
Even like the old man at the bakery, you probably would.
Yeah. Even the old man at the bakery, it's very true.
The mystery about, I was like...
Yeah, we might interrogate the old man at the bakery a little bit, actually, at some point. The illusion of the scaffolding, could you unpack that a little bit more before we get into our extracts? Why is it called scaffolding?
So Anna, in 2019, present day, more or less, is living in a Parisian building in Belleville, and it is being refaced. Every 10 years in Paris, they reface the buildings to make them all, you know, pretty and clean. Then they get dirty again really fast. So it's tremendously expensive. Everyone who lives in the building has to chip in money to pay for it, and extremely not only inconvenient, but really like shapes your day-to-day life to have just constant like, you know, like jackhammer on your building, and sort of like inside your skull. So I was trying to just kind of explore what it would be like. Well, I remember because it happened to me, but to try to explore what it would be like if I just had a miscarriage, my husband were in London, I'm having a lot of depressive cling film days, and they're redoing the face of the building.
Also, there's lots of scaffolding around who's propping themselves up or someone else propping someone else up. And the scaffolding, I think, through the time jumps as well, you know, that you recognise that this has gone on in Paris for a long time. And even when we come to London as well, I kind of feel that there's always scaffolding in London. Someone I know from America once said to me, it's like a developing nation over here. He said, everything's always under construction.
Nothing's ever allowed to just be finished for a bit.
Nothing's ever finished.
But
And I'm like,
it
everything's
did
very
feel
old.
very like... it tied in as well to how many... you know, our main women in this book are deconstructing and reconstructing in a kind of constant state of that. Hashtag, aren't we all? But it did feel a bit like that, and scaffolding maybe in my reading ways. I feel like I'm coming in with some GCSE thoughts here. You're welcome. The kind of the tightness and the looseness with which we hold all our different relationships, and the sort of constant state of flux that they're in too.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I was trying to kind of take apart this idea of the novel as, you know, having this like main character who goes from one state of being to another and like growth over the course of it. And it's like, well, no, like, you know, we don't really change. Like things happen, but we're basically essentially the same people. And so, you know, the scaffolding can come up and go back and then be taken down. And, you know, the building's had a makeover, but it'll go back up again. So it's really a book about like cycles and, permanence.
A little interlude in our life that permanently changes, but not so you could see it from the outside. That's what I loved about it, is I feel in the last 5 to 10 years, I am massively, massively, massively changed. But I don't know that my friends get that. And I want to go, you know, I've changed a lot. And they're like, I don't know, you're still with Tom living in Camden.
Yeah.
What is this?
That's
and I'm like,
interesting.
but I've changed loads. It's not like
but you'll change some more. That's just it. You haven't reached your final.
Oh no, I'm not at my final destination.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Or your
I
final
found
version.
that's so funny that you say that like it's about things never changing. I 100% thought it was about how things are constantly changing and like never stopped, never static.
That's what I meant. The sort of the state of change is ongoing.
Is
and
your permanent
she's
state.
kind of in love with the Tour Saint-Jacques, which is a monument, medieval monument, sort of in the center of Paris, which for like decades was under scaffolding. No one had seen the face of this, you know, medieval tower for 20 years or something. And she was, you know, excited, like, when's the day where they're going to take down the scaffolding? And they took down the scaffolding, and she was kind of like, unimpressed. Is that all? That's what's been under the scaffolding all this time. So it's also about like, we don't have to wait for the scaffolding to come down. Like we can just enjoy things while the scaffolding's up.
Yes. And sometimes the mystique of what's behind the scaffolding is greater than anything that can be revealed.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Jess,
Am I doing
would
the
you
first
like
reading out?
Would you like to do a little bit of reading out?
I've chosen a tiny bit because it is incongruous and it's stuck in my mind because of its incongruity with the rest of the book, and it's not going to spoil anything, and also it's funny. I have had a dream that I've been invited to the Queen's lesbian wedding. I'm not sure what's happened to her husband, but she's getting hitched again. And this time it's to a nice American woman, very unpretentious and lovely. And for some reason, I've been invited to the wedding. And because it's a queer wedding, no one has to curtsy to her. She wears Vivienne Westwood tartan. That's the whole chapter. Glorious.
That's lovely. It's like a little peep behind the curtain, and also there's surrealness in it that you can sort of see where in life that's come from. American woman, probably a little bit about Prince Harry and Edward and Mrs. Simpson. Yeah. But it's also the queerness of the unqueerable, which is the Queen is unqueerable, or was unqueerable as she's alive when this happens. It sort of reflects the queer invitation in her of what would it be like, I think. What do you feel about that passage, Lauren?
Well, there's a lot of kind of weird, surreal moments in the book, and this is, I sort of let them come in as they appeared. And I think, Anna's come to London to be with her husband who's working there, and she's trying to be a good wife and show up. And so she's kind of getting to know this new culture. And, the Queen is, what is more British than the Queen, or until, in 2019 when this was taking place. Anna's at this point, obviously getting closer and closer to possibly sleeping with Clémentine. And so she's got queer relationships on the mind. And I guess if she had seen herself previously as, heterosexual and is now contemplating queerness, it's as radical for her as the Queen, having a lesbian wedding. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's the sort of the thinking the unthinkable and dare I do the undoable, and then discovering perhaps it's not as undoable as all that. Yeah,
exactly. And, the Vivienne Westwood tartan, there's what is more staid than tartan, but Vivienne Westwood found a way to make it punk. So I like this idea of kind of punkifying the Queen.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what Vivienne Westwood did. There's a really near here, there's an exhibition of all Vivienne Westwood's her own designs, but the ones that she actually wore. That you can bid on them, and she gives the money's going to Amnesty and Greenpeace and various other foundations and charities and things.
That's brilliant.
And but although when I told Syrian Steve, who lives with my husband and me, he said, "But wasn't Vivienne Westwood famous for never wearing pants? She never wore knickers. Would you want to buy one of her dresses?" And I was like, I think people are going to put them in museums and stuff, and I don't necessarily think they're going to go out. I don't think you're allowed to wash them. No. Because I went to because Amnesty showed me them, and the curator showed me them and said, "No, look, there's lipstick on this, and that shows she had a good night out. So you must never wash the lipstick off."
They're like artifacts. They're not like
I think some people they said that Vivienne would want people to wear them.
Yeah. I think you've sort of ruined that.
What, with the pants thing, with the knickers thing? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Possible not to have at least a look now.
Would you like to read something? Also, someone's calling you.
That is my son trying to FaceTime me.
Do you need to FaceTime your son?
No, it's okay.
Are you sure?
He's okay. Yeah, my partner texted me and said he wants to see mommy. And then I started getting video
calls. You can say hi and say mommy's on stage. Oh my God, he's so adorable.
I know he's really cute. Yeah.
How did you reject a call from that face?
I know, I'm trying to be professional. If they call back, I'll answer.
All right. Yeah, you're very welcome to. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to read a piece from your own book?
Sure, yeah. I mean, would you like? Do you mind passing me the copy that's behind you, or another copy? Thank you. So I have one that I could do from part 2, so about like Florence and Henri, if you want, or I can do some more, Anna and Clémentine, whatever.
What would you like? Do you want some from the 70s or from the present day? Present day. They want present day.
Then you shall have it. Another day, Clémentine comes over and wants to talk about a television series she's been watching based on Irish novelists. So I just realized that this is a lot longer than what you read. It's like That much. Is that okay?
That's the shortest anyone's ever read anything, though.
So it's okay to read like this, this, and this?
Yes!
Okay, good. Just making
and
sure.
It's your book.
Well, I know, but it's your show.
Take
and
up
I don't
space.
Wanna,
No. This show is about you, for you. These people have come to see you.
All right.
So give the people what they want.
All right. I'm going to give you a little bit of Anna and Clémentine. Okay, so she's been watching this television series based on an Irish novel, which I have also been watching. It's kind of annoying, says Clémentine. Like, sleep together, don't sleep together, do your thing. It must be because it's still a Catholic country. I keep waiting for oh my God, my parents in the front row. Okay. Sorry, guys. Apologies.
Just go like this.
Don't listen. Sorry. I keep waiting for someone to do something really shocking for TV, like, I don't know, fisting, nipple clamps, thruples, revolution. It's Clémentine. She's a live wire. Instead, it's just this who cares dialectic. But dramatically necessary, I say, keeps you watching. Clémentine sighs. The most interesting part of infidelity isn't will they or won't they, it's everything else around it. What if it's all fine, she says, making a dramatic hand gesture. Then no more conflict. But there's still life, people leading lives. And the whole thing about needing to confess to the wife. She makes a little sound of exasperation. Fidelity is a container for sex, to keep it from being too threatening. I have no idea what Jonathan gets up to, she says, and I don't think it's my business to know. I don't want to know anything about it. It has nothing to do with what we have together. Don't you think? What about you and David? Do you only plan to ever have sex with him, only him, for the rest of your life? Or maybe you already have sex with other people, she says, her face properly glowing now. I think about it. I guess I'm sort of relieved not to have to worry about going out to find someone to sleep with anymore. Clémentine snorts, a ringing endorsement of marriage. I think David is more committed to fidelity than I am, I say. I'm more of a realist, but I'm also a pragmatist. People are unfaithful, and that's human nature. I spend a lot of time with my patients trying to help them see how they can accommodate it without letting it destroy them, whichever role they play. But I'd personally rather not bother with the drama of it in my own life. Leave that to the Irish novelists. Have you ever cheated on David, she asks. No, I say. Have you, on Jonathan? No, she says. Then a second later, well, I did make out with a girl at a bar one time. I was out with a friend who was up from Marseille, and we got very, very drunk, and we were talking to these people at the bar. And, you know, it's very easy to kiss someone. Is it? 1 minute you're talking, and the next you're touching tongues. Huh. But I didn't, run home and tell him. Whatever disruption may come in that sense, it has to be absorbed back into the relationship. And I think it was. I really think it was. She pauses. So David is being faithful to you in London? I think so. I don't know. I don't mind if he kisses someone at a bar. No sooner have I said it than I know it's not true. I would be incensed to think David's desire had moved towards someone else like that. But I don't take it back. There's nothing actually that intimate about touching someone else's tongue with your tongue, is there? She says. We just don't do it very often. We're confusing rarity with intimacy. Surely the same definition extends to genital sex, I say. That's also generally a pretty rare thing to do with someone else, someone who isn't your partner, I mean. Unless that's something you're specifically into, then I guess it isn't that rare. No judgment. No judgment, she says. She thinks for a minute. You're always saying that Lacan says that as individuals we are constituted through lack, right? So I was thinking, she widens her eyes wider, that it's like an orgasm. So amazing as you're moving towards it and cresting over, but even as you get there, it's imperfect. You're flooded with memories of better ones, like it must feel to do a triple Lutz. Even as you soar into the air, you know you've done it better and you want to do it again, better, right then, immediately, and you want more, and you want it to go on, and it's over too soon. That's love, I say. Lacan says something like, our sex organs leave us after sex, or we shed them, I can't remember, and all that remains to us are memories quickly dissolving. Yes, she says. So being in love, having sex, whatever, it's like we're dissolving as we're doing it, and we keep doing it to keep ourselves together. And I wonder what keeps her together with her boyfriend, what keeps them from dissolving. She's so free-spirited, politically committed, young, and queer. Is she one of those girls who needs an older man to feel safe and looked after? It doesn't make sense. But then I have found people often don't. Thank you.
I love it.
That's a great extract.
Yeah, I started thinking about the bit set in the early 70s and how, with the similar themes coming up for that couple there in terms of the confines of monogamy, or monogamy as a theory, how much more tension there was around it and how much more denial and how much less self-awareness and how much less confidence. It's a fascinating thing to think about, and it's an ongoing conversation, and it still doesn't feel like a mainstream conversation. Yeah, amazing. And I think, I don't know, when I start dwelling on, it's made me start, that's the thing that reading both books, back to back, that's the overarching thing that's been knocking around in my head since, the kind of like just bare bones, emotion-free, like the philosophy of that, like structurally, how we structure our relationships. And what we ask of them, and how I don't know, how bound we are to what we're used to doing, and how bound we are by what we think kindness demands. And I don't want to spoil, but I really love it that everybody ends up okay. Like, I love that. That's and it really made me think, and how everyone behaves within and outside of their relationships, sexually, romantically, in these books, in your book. Yeah, it did make me think about the permanency of hurt as well, and pain. Like, there are lots of instances in relationships, even that stay together, that don't stay together, of causing one another hurt, that actually, or anger over something. And it happens when there's a feud between countries, between families. Historically, it happens on a grander scale as well, where often there's this hurt that we hold on to, and some hurts, like she's pining for an ex-lover at the beginning of this book, and it stayed with her, and she's annoyed that it stayed with her. That piece of her broken heart didn't quite get mended, to be basic about it. Like, and I don't know, and then there are some hurts that linger with you like that, exactly the sort of hurt you wouldn't want to inflict on anyone. And then you get hurts where the feud is still there and the argument's still there, but no one can quite remember what caused it in the first place. And that's most of them, luckily. And it made me kind of reflect on that and dwell on that, actually in a really sort of hopeful way, in the sense that once you're at the point, hopefully, in any situation, grander conflict or interpersonal conflict, where you're saying, I can't even remember what started this, then surely then you're in, like, healing territory at that point, or like, shall we leave it? Like, it's done, it's run its course. Sorry, I went to a million places there.
No, it takes you to a million places, that passage.
Does.
Yeah. It actually was so interesting reading this while thinking about Simone de Beauvoir, because she and Jean-Paul Sartre just said, we're not going along with this bourgeois idea of monogamy, that it's a convention, it's something to trap us, we can be our first, only, primary, and we can still have adventures and experiences and connections. And it is still, I mean, she was born in, 1907. The Inseparables the story is done by the late 20s, presumably.
Yeah, it's set.
And it's still a radical idea. It's still an idea where people go, oh, but really? But could you? But, we're so bound to convention. And maybe there is something in monogamy and jealousy that is human. And I'm not saying there's nothing in that and that doesn't work for lots of people, or it's a bit like democracy is the worst form of government except all the others. It maybe that's the only thing many people can do. But I do think a lot of us do it because it's modelled, and it's the thing that we're told. If we don't do that well, we're not successful. And it's her being left alone. Her husband and she have had a bereavement. She's finding it hard to sexually connect with him again. She physically can't. And being left alone. And she has this, this neighbour who comes in representing everything Simone de Beauvoir, really. She comes in with her cigarettes and she says, all I do is lie around the house all day masturbating. And she enters as sex. She enters as queerness. Yeah. She enters as the other. She enters as the what if, the path less travelled by. And it's hard to hang out with someone like that for any period of time, especially if your husband's in London, and not just see what's on the other side of that door.
Yeah.
Lauren, why did you choose that passage?
Because you guys are so funny. And I didn't want to bring the temperature down with a bit that I usually read, which is the cling film bit, which is just much more meditative and ruminative. And the energy seemed more like Clémentine and Anna talking about sex. And you said 2019 and not 1972, so that also shaped it. But I like reading that bit. I like the kind of, it goes to the heart of so much of what the book is about, that it's not about like she cheats on him, their marriage breaks down, and everybody tries to feel happy afterward. It's about containers. It's about the homes that we live in, the relationships that we live in, and how we try to make those things feel livable. Because you can't just like hit a bad patch in a long-term relationship and be like, well, that's done, dust your hands and move on. Like you have to make it work somehow and figure out, you don't have to, but
you often do.
You often do. Most people do. There's so much there that you can't just give it up and walk away from it. You can, but you don't have to. And so that's what I wanted to look at, is ways of making that feel livable and ways that we relate to each other. There's a quote from Hélène Cixous, the great French feminist, that I open with, one of the epigraphs, which she says, sorry, I just want to get this right. The other must remain absolutely strange within the greatest possible proximity. We need to somehow feel that our loved ones, are the people that we have these profound relationships with, remain ultimately mysterious to us. They can't just be absorbed into our lives and like another limb or something. But, how can love be livable, basically, I think is the ultimate question of this book.
Amazing.
It made me think about how we live our lives in episodes. I don't tend to think of your life isn't a movie. It's episodes. And you look back on that era. Sometimes I see old pictures of myself and I go, oh, that was the era when I was dressing like that and hanging out with those people. And I was going through my, now it's like a sort of trope on the internet is my, I'm going through my goddess era or my slut phase or my, and that's right. You look back and you think, well, Anna gets to look back and think, oh, that was that period where my husband had moved to London, not because we'd separated, just because he got a job there and I didn't feel I could go at that time. And that was my phase where I was mourning, I was grieving, and I was finding this other outlet and this other version of myself. And that period shaped me, but I didn't have to become that like it was an independent film. I didn't have to become that. It just shaped my journey. And it was a period I'll look back on and think about and probably fantasize about, but it's not everything I am, and it doesn't speak to the whole of my marriage, and that was really wonderful. I'm going to read my little bit now. The buildings are being resurfaced with care for women's bodies, their consent, their right to exist. Some of the slogans, this is feminist slogans that are going up over the Parisian buildings. Some of the slogans confide in us, others chastise us, others yell for us to listen. I look around, but no one else seems to be noticing the astonishing things the walls are saying. Walking downhill from the metro, I encounter 2 more signs. And the signs say,
Stop féminicide. Nous sommes la voix de celles qui n'en ont plus.
I realize I have recently seen someone on the metro reading a copy of Le Parisien with a headline about how many women have been murdered this past year, and how many more it is than last year. All of a sudden, the signs begin to make sense. When Clémentine comes over, I ask her if she's seen them. Seen them? She says. I was out there a few nights ago pasting them up. You should come with us next time, she says. So I loved this part of the book, these feminist signs going up, and obviously stop feminicide means stop killing women. What does the other one mean?
We are the voice of those who no longer have a voice.
So these French slogans are going up all over Paris, and they are feminist slogans, and they are about the number of women being killed. And Clémentine's always saying to Anna, come out with us, as they do this guerrilla feminist activism. But Anna is too in cling film, or it's not who she is, or...
Anna's an interesting character. In this, she's somewhat informed by myself and my own kind of age group, life experience. When I was younger, activism just didn't seem to be something that anyone I knew did. Like, it wasn't, I mean, I know there were activists. I don't mean it to sound like that, but it wasn't something that was accessible to me at any point. And so by the time I got to be in my 20s, I was a bit skeptical of it. And I write about this in Flaneuse, getting kettled in 2003 by a protest against the Iraq War. And I was just very cynical and like, you know, they're going to go to war whether or not I put my body in the street, you know. And that chapter is about coming to feel that actually it is very important that I put my body in the street to, you know, to protest the actions of a rogue government. And actually, I just saw someone posted, the Colleuses have been active still, and so they posted a slogan the other day that said, "L'été sera chaud, évitons que ce soit facho." So that means the summer will be, this is a bad translation, you can't get the pun in English, but the summer will be hot, let's avoid it being fascist as well. So obviously this is a kind of, you know, we have the French election on the second round of the French election on Sunday, and like let's like, make a Republican bloc to prevent the far right from gaining power. So yeah, I've lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, but yeah.
I'm just really intrigued as to the meaning of the signs in the book and what Anna's resistance to, like she's clearly loving spending time with Clementine, but she is in Clingfilm, she is grieving, but that she keeps promising and saying, I will go out with you. Yeah,
I think she wants to be able to. I think she would love to see herself that way, but she's a psychoanalyst. She sits in a room and listens to other people. They come to her and she tries to listen for what they're telling her. I think she's doesn't see herself as a very active person trying to affect change in the world, but more trying to listen to what people are telling her so that they might then affect change in their lives. And it's meeting Clémentine that makes her think like, wow, maybe psychoanalysis should be more politically helpful, and maybe we do need to connect ourselves back to the collective, and maybe it is through collective action that feminism will advance instead of everyone sitting in their house, you know, feeling cling-filmed. But I think, you know, she's also skeptical of Clémentine's kind of let's go out and put signs up, but she's like, but what else are you doing?
There's something really interesting in that kind of subsequent generations of feminism and what it looks like effectively, and that kind of like, okay, I support this, but that's not what I'm doing, or that's not what we did, and we did it like this. And I think I found that really relatable and really interesting. Like, I think watching, I don't know, people with a decade on me being much more technologically native, much more free and easy with that kind of activism, and, you know, mobilizing online stuff. It's so interesting. But then I also really liked it that Anna, every now and again, even though there's guilt's too strong a word, but there's quite a lot of awareness that she's doing fuck all compared to Clementine, even though she supports it. But then equally, there's quite a few moments where she goes, I hope she goes on to do da-da-da. And it kind of like, yeah, you know, you still want her to do something grown up and applied with all this energy that she's got. Like, even though she's obviously been really moved and kind of brought into the present by that activism, by the slogans. They're a piece of history, not just feminist history, of Paris. Like, it's massive.
Hello, Guilty Feminists. It's Jessica Regan here. I'm just jumping on to say the reason I haven't been holding the Big Speeches workshops is because I've been working on a pretty big speech of my own. My solo storytelling show, to be exact, called 16 Postcodes, which is debuting at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival from the 31st of July until the 26th of August, every day except the 12th. And it's going to be on at Bunker 1, 3:30 every day at the Pleasance Courtyard. So I'd love to see you there, as I need an audience to help me tell my story. You're going to be participating a little bit in this odyssey as we go north, south, east and west of London, traversing an impenetrable city with an all too open heart as I share my real life stories of love and landlords and mice and men and a whole lot more besides. So I'd love to see you there, and do come and say hi afterwards if you're along.
I'd love to bring in the Inseparables now, because this is a book you translated, and I'd love to look at it through the lens of comparing it to your book. What drew you to Simone de Beauvoir and to translate the Inseparables?
Beauvoir, I was first exposed to as an undergraduate at Barnard College, which is the Women's College of Columbia University, famously very feminist. Yeah, and so I read The Second Sex at university and, accepted her as she is a major voice in feminism. You need to know who this is. We read some of her fiction at university as well. I had a real kind of breakthrough moment with her reading her youth diaries when they were published in France, 2005, 2006, something like that. I was Cahiers de Jeunesse, they're called in French. I don't know what the English translation is, but I was really struck by this, young woman from a very bourgeois background who had very big dreams, was super brilliant. They were kind of a bit like the Susan Sontag diaries, if you guys read those when they came out. There's a similar kind of energy of a brilliant young woman who's trying to figure out how she's going to be someone. And she writes about her friend Zaza in the youth diaries, as you would, because this is out, the relationship in the Inseparables as it's happening. And so that was the first time I encountered this friendship and the story of, tragic story of Zaza's early death. And then, was just very into Beauvoir all those years. And then fast forward to a few years ago, her adoptive daughter, Sylvie Le Bon de Beauvoir, had found this manuscript in a drawer, amongst Beauvoir's files in her archive, and decided it needed to be published on its own. And so the rights were sold, and the English publisher asked me to do it. And then there's a different American translator. We don't talk about that version. But yeah, so they approached me. I did a sample, but I knew the minute I opened it and started translating it, I was like, I feel very electrically connected to this book.
And interestingly, Deborah Levy said that you were the Susan Sontag of your generation. So that really ties you together.
Yeah. If she said it, it must be true.
Well, it's on the front of your book as well, though, Lauren Elkin.
It is.
I
know.
So I know you don't decide necessarily what goes in front of your book. The people who are trying to sell those books do, but they're not wrong. They're not wrong. Would you like to read a little bit of your translation of the Inseparables?
Sure. Okay. I'm going to read a tiny, tiny bit of the beginning and then skip forward a little bit, because I want you guys to meet André. So it begins. When I was 9 years old, I was a good little girl, though this hadn't always been the case. As a small child, the adults' tyranny caused me to throw such tantrums that one of my aunts declared quite seriously, "Sylvie is possessed by a demon." War and religion tamed me. Right away, I demonstrated perfect patriotism by stomping all over my doll because she was made in Germany, though I didn't really care for her to begin with. I was taught that God would only protect France if I were obedient and pious. There was no escaping it. The other girls and I would walk through the Basilica of Sacré-Cœur, waving banners and singing. I began to pray frequently, and I developed a real taste for it. Abbé Dominique, the chaplain at the Collège Adélaïde where we went to school, encouraged my ardor. Dressed all in tulle with a bonnet made of Irish lace, I made my first communion, and from that day forward, I set a perfect example for my little sisters. Heaven heard my prayers, and my father was appointed to a desk job at the Ministry of War because of his heart trouble. That morning, I was especially excited because it was the first day of school. And so then there's a description of what they're wearing to school and why she likes school. She likes the smell of the main hall, looking at the display cases of old dead things that came here to die a second time. When the bell rang, I entered the classroom they called Sainte Marguerite. All the rooms looked the same. The students sat around an oval table covered in black moleskin, which would be presided over by our teacher. Our mothers sat behind us and kept watch while knitting balaclavas. I went over to my stool and saw the one next to it was occupied by a hollow-cheeked little girl with brown hair whom I didn't recognize. She looked very young. Her serious, shining eyes focused on me with intensity. "So you're the best student in the class?" "I'm Sylvie Lepage," I said. "What's your name?" "André Gallard. I'm 9. If I look younger, it's because I got burned alive and didn't grow much after that. I had to stop studying for a year, but Maman wants me to catch up on what I missed. Can you lend me your notebooks from last year?" I think I might just leave it there because André is just adorable.
Yeah.
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 Lovely.
And I gave a précis of your book. Could you give a précis of The Inseparables, what it's about?
Yeah, it's the story of these two young girls living in Paris, André and Sylvie. Sylvie is based on Simone de Beauvoir, and André is based on her childhood best friend called Zaza, Elisabeth Lacoin, who came from they're both very bourgeois, upper middle class families, but André's family has like a hint of aristocracy to it. So her family is clearly, like more higher placed than Sylvie's family, and they become best friends. André's family is, fervently Catholic, very devout, and Sylvie's family is kind of secular, a bit more secular. And as the years grow on, they just are inseparable, the inseparable of the title. They love talking to each other. They talk to each other the way the adults never talk to them or allow them to talk. They talk about, philosophy and school, their classwork and love and God and what they want to do when they grow up. And it's really through André that Sylvie, becomes herself. And it's like, André's like a testing ground for all of Sylvie's kind of budding ideas about the world. So the novel kind of charts their friendship as it goes on. I don't know how much more to say about where it goes. I've hinted at tragedy, but I'll leave it at a hint.
Well, tragedy is latent in the first meeting where she says, I was burnt alive, so I've missed a few days off school. But she was
That's exactly how 8-year-olds communicate with each other. My son is 8 and it is, nice to meet you. Here's my full name and here's the biggest thing that's ever happened to me.
It's a wonderful relationship. Could you, Jess, speak to the queerness in both books? The sort of
I will.
The sort of sapphic invitation.
I
of both
hadn't
books.
realised there was any in the Inseparables until quite far in.
Can I ask what tipped you off?
I can't remember. I've written at what percentage in my Kindle it happened, and that's no use to anyone. But I have a note in my phone. Oh, this is so unhelpful. I'm so sorry. Let's say 3/4 of the way through, at some point, I've written down, it's not queer love, is it? just a friendship you'd die for, ? An obsessive one. Because it is a friendship they die for. And she talks about it in terms of romantic love at various points. There's the status shift that seems to happen, especially in, maybe this is ridiculous. I don't know. I'm going to say in those first few times you fall in love, there feels to be, I speak to my own experience only, but I feel like at all the times I fell in love in my teens and in my 20s, I feared that they didn't love me back. And I mean that with friends as well as falling in romantic love. It felt like there was an imbalance and that felt torturous. And this book speaks to that so much. And there, the status shifts, etc., but it finds its peace without ruining anything. And as those things become less, it's less a competition. You're less insecure as you get old and you realise through thick or thin that person's not going anywhere. And I think it really talks to the complexity of friendship when I don't know if it's a queer love. I genuinely don't know. There is an obsession, but I have, there are friendships where you would die for them, and there's friendships where those friendships end after decades of incredible intensity, and it feels the same as when a romantic relationship ends, especially if it's ended by one party and not the other, and you're not ready, and you weren't ready. You didn't have the armour in place for that, and it wasn't a mutual. So I don't know. I think I'd love to know whether it was intended to have queer undertones. Do you know?
How queer do you think it is?
I think it's very queer.
Really?
I mean, there's the birthday
again.
Scene where Sylvie makes a little change purse for André, lined in red satin.
And her mother doesn't like it.
And their mother, André's mother
likes
doesn't like it. She sees the gift. The gift's like excessive.
Yeah.
It's too much.
I thought it was just
the
gaudy.
change purse is a code for, lady bits. And it's red satin en plus. And then she gives it to her in a closet. She takes her into a closet and gives her
a red satin change purse. And her mother doesn't like it. She's like, what are you doing in the closet with a red satin change purse? Why are you giving it to my daughter?
I also didn't guess the end of Sixth Sense. So I'm the wrong comedian to have asked whether or not I
think it's super obvious. I think it's coded.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it had to be.
But it was that because
and her daughter,
written?
Sylvie Le Bon de Beauvoir, used to make out. And Beauvoir would say, we're not lesbians, we don't do anything below the waist.
Okay.
So, and Beauvoir herself had affairs with her students, I'm sorry to say, but she did sleep with women.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's out of the range. I don't think it's a... But Sylvie Le Bon de Beauvoir, when this book came out, there were critics who said this was a queer love story. And Le Bon de Beauvoir was like, absolument pas. Ce n'est pas le cas. She was like, no, absolutely. But
the well of loneliness, poor lesbians reading through that, looking for anything, like any kind of, you think it's going to be like
just
lady,
scrabbling in the dust for crumbs.
Yeah.
Imagine in like 1950s, you probably were like,
yeah, you'd be like,
even in
she
the
looked at her funny.
1980s.
There's a change purse.
She said
Surely
purse.
that means
She's used the
something.
word purse. She's used the word. I'm taking this book to bed. She's used the word purse.
also
What do you do with a purse? You put something in it.
Yeah, I got you there.
You can
I'll work
penetrate the
that out.
purse,
Yeah,
or
okay.
the purse can engulf
I think
the
you
change.
are scrabbling for crumbs if that's all you've got in your
And
bank.
people were, though. Lesbians were always scrabbling.
In the
for-
50s, it must have been worse.
Yeah.
My partner is a whole lesbian, whereas I'm bisexual, and she, in their 80s, this is genuine. She has to have one of her first wanks too.
Not in her 80s, in the 80s.
In her 80s, no. Jesus Christ. No, it's not one of those stepdaughter mum things.
She's still in her 30s.
She's younger than me. Yeah, she's still in her 30s. When she was a teenager, there's so little literature available that she had to have one of her first wanks to the instruction manual inside a pack of Tampax.
Oh.
It's one of the most adorable things I've ever heard. So maybe this was as raunchy as it got in the 50s.
That is a sad story. Well, didn't Beauvoir say...
It's really sweet and funny.
Didn't she say that, like, the best... that love should not be limited to man or woman, that the people who can really love are bisexual. I mean, she didn't use the word bisexual because it hadn't been invented, but she was the biggest bi representation, I think, in the history of literature. And she did have a long affair with Jean-Paul Sartre, or long marriage with Jean-Paul Sartre, because they're a massive power couple. Can you imagine what a power couple? Imagine who's coming for dinner. Well, we'll put Andy and Tina on the end, and then we'll put Chris and Chris. Shall we have Simone there and John there? Because otherwise it'll be philosophy all night. Put him at the other end. They must have been the biggest philosophical feminist power couple in the history of time. Imagine knowing them. I mean, wow. But the queerness in your book, just to sort of tie it back into Scaffolding, which is the book that we mostly want people to buy, not that we don't want you to buy Simone de Beauvoir. She still translated it. She still gets royalties. Also, it's good for your education.
Tiny.
Maybe
a penny.
Okay, you need to get 5 or 6 people that book. And
yeah, absolutely. Everyone in your life needs both of these books. Just to bring it back to your book, how influenced by Simone de Beauvoir, being an aficionado, do you think you were with Scaffolding, with the sort of release from the bourgeois and the invitation into queerness, and the invitation into open relationships, and this focus on the sort of, the second wave of feminism, and obviously, Beauvoir predates the second wave of feminism, but the second wave of feminism and the feminism throughout the ages. How much does Scaffolding owe Beauvoir?
It's interesting. So I think, throughout my career, even back when I was an academic, I've always worked on women's writing, and very often queer women's writing. My PhD was partly on, Virginia Woolf, and there's, my MPhil was on Claude Cahun, who's Claude Cahun, I think people say in English, sorry.
Oh, I love
how
Claude
you
Cahun.
say in English. She's just, or we might prefer to use they pronouns for them at this point. But
do you all know Claude Cahun, surrealist who lived on Jersey with her, their lover, and
slash stepsister,
pretend stepsister.
No, actual stepsister.
Oh,
Their parents married.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But they pretended to be sisters so they could get away with being lovers.
I mean, they really were stepsisters. But that was
but
a cover for...
But if they just said
call them
we're
the
sisters, that's right. I knew that they were pretending to be something, but to be lovers,
what
that's
the
right.
fuck is going on?
It was it's incredibly French. It's a French Brady Bunch, really. It's so
totally
French. But they, despite the fact that she was Jewish and queer, she just thought, fuck it, I'm not leaving, and built her own resistance. The two of them built their own resistance in Jersey and did all this amazing activism in Jersey until they were caught and still amazingly managed to survive the war.
Yeah.
I mean, amazingly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so Cahun, Woolf, these are kind of my like major references. But by the time I was writing, I started writing Scaffolding in 2007. So all of that is kind of in the air and for me in my life. And then when I was finishing the novel, I had just done this book. So I do think that there's the novel Scaffolding was always about Clémentine and Anna and their friendship. But I hadn't delved into it, I think, until the past 5-6 years or something. And so I think the culture has changed a lot as well. I mean, I think it's just become a lot more permissive to talk about queer love, or, you know, like when I was young, it was like you were gay or you were straight, you know, you were a lesbian, or, you know, you liked women or you liked men. But I think we can talk a lot more fluidly now about bisexuality and people like, you know, people liking people and not just people of one gender. So I think that kind of cultural shift edged Scaffolding in a certain direction. And then, I think probably having done the Inseparables just at the very end of drafting Scaffolding sharpened it. And I mean, there was one day where I was like, oh, they're going to get together. Okay. You know, I didn't see it coming. It was a surprise.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was a surprise that you saw Anna and Clémentine getting together.
Yeah.
Oh,
they were
really?
just
They were
just
going to be friends.
They
and
were
then
just
you
neighbors.
translated some Simone de Beauvoir, and what?
Yeah,
How would you like a purse? Made of satin.
I made it
Please
for you.
come into my closet. My mother is out. Amazing. Oh, well, that's wonderful. So the spirit of Simone de Beauvoir absolutely visited you. Yeah. Well, this book is a million times more exciting because of the racy sex scenes and all the queerness. So well done, Simone de Beauvoir, The Ghost of.
Yeah.
Loving that. I also, I don't have time to read it, but loved as someone who's lost my religion at a young age and had a fervent religion, I loved that she admits, I mean, what a time, like, to admit, you know, she just like, I don't believe in God. And Andre says to her, well, how do you live? And she says, because I love living. But she just gives up God. And I think what's happening in my reading of it, as she starts to worship her friend, this inseparable, she can let go of this relationship with God, which is sort of like this stand-in for love. And it's almost idolatrous the way she loves her friend. But also, it's like, this is the connection of someone who can talk back to you, as opposed to God, who it's a bit of a one-way conversation with God.
It's transference.
It's transference, yeah. And so I think her release from God is her commitment to love her best friend, with whom she would like an even greater connection, but has not yet been given that permission. And I think these books are so great to read in tandem, especially as Lauren's voice is in both of them. Yeah. And it turns out Simone's voice is in both of them. What an amazing combination of books that we have chosen. I mean, we just picked Simone de Beauvoir because we were looking for a classic, but I didn't know how much crossover there was and how much Simone de Beauvoir has given you the scaffolding for your novel.
She did.
And you, no doubt, gave her the scaffolding of English. So this is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now we have time for a couple of questions, and we've got a mic for the audience. Has anyone got a question for Lauren? Yes?
Thanks so much. This has been hilarious and so interesting. I wanted to ask you, Lauren, in the editorial process or in the conversations around marketing, did you have any difficult conversations about bisexuality or about sort of defining the relationship between your protagonists? I have a novel coming out next year, and I can't tell you how many people have asked me, so are they bisexual? Are they really lesbians? What is the nature of this relationship? This doesn't ring true. So speaking of bisexual erasure, I thought it'd be interesting to reflect on like what reception you've had, or like maybe it was a really positive one.
Yeah. No, my editor is here, Kaya, and she never said anything like that. I think our main concern was more the character of Clémentine, making sure she didn't become like manic pixie dream girl, trying to root her in, reality, and, just make her fleshed out and, enough of a person that we're not just like, okay, here she goes again, here's some more fairy dust.
Which she is, though, she's flawed, and she's got some roots in conventional, fiscal, and also perhaps everyday love.
Yeah, completely. So, luckily everyone thought the book was great. But I will look forward to reading your book next year.
What's your book going to be called?
It's called Fundamentally, and it's a dark comedy about de-radicalising ISIS brides.
Oh,
Wow.
It's also queer.
Amazing.
What's your name?
Amazing.
Nisaba Yunus.
Wonderful. Okay,
Thank you.
Nice
we
to
will watch
meet
out
you.
for that. Anybody else have a question? I think I saw a question there.
I wondered if you could just speak a little bit about your process in two parts. I just finished Art Monsters and then read Scaffolding. And Art Monsters was so deeply researched. What was the process? Were you writing both concurrently? Did you sort of switch from one to the other? And then I ask this with the full awareness that this is not something that gets asked of male authors very often, but how you balanced your process with parenting.
Yeah. I have no problem with that question. I recognize that it's one that only gets asked to women, but I think it's a completely valid question that everyone solves for themselves as best they can. And I'm not solving it right now. It's very, very difficult. My son goes to school, but that's only part of the day, and he has various other needs that make it really challenging. So I don't have a ton of writing time right now. I massively narrow down that is the ghost of Simone de Beauvoir.
I was thinking exactly the same thing.
And I just take on as much work as I think I can realistically get done. Whereas in the past, before I had a child or when he was much smaller, I just was kind of a working machine and could get it all done. And now I've had to slow down. And so I've accepted that that's just the period of my life that I'm in right now. And, I have to go with it rather than struggling against it. But in terms of your question about the process, thank you for that. I started this book in 2007, so I was working on it very slowly over the years. And then every now and then when I finished a book, I'd be like, great, I have some more time to work on Scaffolding. But it really was kind of fits and starts. And then finished Art Monsters. When I sold Art Monsters and Scaffolding together, Chatto were very kind and bought Scaffolding on a partial manuscript. And so when I finished Art Monsters, I was like, right, now I get to finally finish Scaffolding. And so I did. But Scaffolding is also a different book because I had just written Art Monsters. So now suddenly I had this kind of wealth of references to 70s feminism at my fingertips that might have been there before, but they came in much more organically because of having just written Art Monsters. And I think a lot more references in terms of art. I mean, Clémentine is a kind of budding art historian. And I think I was aware of the art world beforehand, but super aware of it after. So now I could drop in references to Pierre Hugues and Remedios Varo and things like that. Whereas I don't know if the book would have been the same had I not just written a book about art. So yeah, thank you.
So in a way, the process is the way to apply that process to other writers is. I think it's such good advice, is immerse yourself in other things. If you're sitting there in front of a laptop and you're uninspired, go to an art gallery, go to a library, go for a walk, sit on a bus and people watch, because then you'll come back and your brain will be full of stimulus and it will flow, as opposed to sort of sitting there trying to think up ideas when the world is all around you.
Yeah.
And that thing where each project that you have going starts colouring in the others.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't have to be...
Yeah. Eve Sedgwick, who taught at the place where I did my PhD, she's great queer theorist, invented queer theory, basically, used to say to read horizontally, don't just read vertically. Read the science section of the New York Times.
Yes.
You never know. Something's at work, even when you think you're reading something that has nothing to do with what you're working on.
Completely.
Yeah. Also, just on that parenting question, never stop asking the question.
Yeah.
So let's just ask everyone it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the idea that my son will be being asked how he's managing if he has kids.
Yes, absolutely. But also people have other lives as well. People are carers, people have other... what's your work-life balance can be asked of anyone. Yeah. And the problem is the focus on women. And so I think as long as you're acknowledging, I would ask this of a man too. I think it's still a good question, because it's really easy to go, oh my God, how much do you do? And I wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah. And so just even hearing, it's hard. Yeah. And sometimes I have to do less can be really reassuring for people to think, yeah, I could still do it. Yes, one here.
Thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I'm just wondering, as you were working your way through Scaffolding, what was something that as you were approaching an idea or a moment in the narrative that scared you and you said, I'm going to keep on moving towards this? And how did you kind of navigate that space as you were creating?
I have to say, probably another reason it took me so long to finish is because I was very daunted by writing about Lacan. Anna is a Lacanian psychoanalyst, and I thought, God, how am I going to convincingly write from the perspective of a Lacanian psychoanalyst unless I read all of Lacan and all of the secondary literature? And he's very hard he's always changing his mind, and it's very slippery stuff and very hard to get to grips with.
In a way, though, that's good, because whatever you say, people go, he didn't say that, he did one day. He's
exactly.
Always
Which period Lacan are we talking about?
Very mercurial guy. So
I live in fear that I'm going to be at an event like this and someone's going to be like, excuse me, I am a Lacanian psychoanalyst and this is nonsense. Hasn't happened yet, but it might still happen. So, it was really just authorizing myself to be like, right, I have understood enough to impersonate a character. I don't necessarily need to become a Lacanian psychoanalyst myself. Although, I wouldn't rule it out. It's fascinating stuff. And maybe one day when my son is grown, I'll retrain.
I wouldn't rule it out with you either. I wouldn't rule anything out. One question here. Can we just pass the mic down?
My understanding is, okay, so you did a PhD. Did you ever see yourself going into academia? And if so, why did you take a turn?
Oh, I went in. I went all the way in. Yeah, I taught university for 15 years, something like that. And then I finally had a full-time job at the University of Liverpool in the English department and did 1 year and was like, right, I'm done. I'm out. I have validated the fact that I did a PhD. I have seen it from both sides now, and I am getting out of here. Yeah, it was just, I found the neoliberal UK university to be extremely exploitative, not at all respectful of my me time, by which I mean my writing time. You're meant to be a researcher, and there's very little time to research. It's my partner is still a lecturer, and it's just this idea that you can just keep getting more and more work piled on you, and it's just part of it's your job, and it's dressed up as all this pastoral care that you're giving to the students, and you're inspiring young minds, and it's no, it's a job, it's labor, it needs to be compensated and respected, and have kind of boundaries put around it. And I couldn't cope. I just couldn't cope with how invasive it felt, and how little time it left me to write. So I was like, I'm just gonna scrabble together what I can from writing and translating and occasional journalism. And, up to now that's been okay. But, I anticipate that at some point I may need to go back to the academy, tail between my legs and be like, I promise I'll be good this time. So yeah, I do miss it. I miss teaching and I miss students. And I miss research. But
we're really glad that you did leave academia to write, because we have a wealth of writing because of that. And we're sure that Scaffolding will be such a big hit, and the attendant movie / streaming deal that you're going to get from it is going to be so huge. You're never going to need to teach again, but you're going to be able to whenever you like. That's the fantasy future I see for you. We've run out of time, but we always play a game at the beginning of the show, which we will insert in. This will be the cold open. So the game is I'm a feminist but, and we make a feminist confessional, and that is not because we genuinely feel guilty. It's to exfoliate anything we might be carrying. All right. This is a book-themed one. I'm a feminist, but what I have in my kitchen, recipe books by Delia Smith, Nigella Lawson, and Nadia Hussein. I also harbour a secret kitchen kink for Gordon Ramsay. I'd trade them all in. All of those books, I'd trade them all in for a little bit of Gordon Ramsay. Okay. Yeah, because he's quite masterful.
At what? Swearing?
Yeah, he's quite shouty. Yeah, he's quite masterful in the kitchen.
Not my vibe.
No, we doesn't. I mean, we all have different confessionals.
He's like a kitchen Boris Johnson. I think you've exposed yourself with that one, Debs, but I've really enjoyed it.
I understand. Do you have an I'm a feminist
it's like a culinary books? Michael Fabricant. No, I do. I'm a feminist, but I recently read a book that turned out to be an absolutely beautiful and brilliant kind of dystopian, post-apocalyptic, mysterious, mind-bendingly kind of philosophical treatise on a number of things. But I read it because the title made me think it was all going to be about banging. And it's called I Who Have Never Known Men.
Ah. And it was not about banging. It sounds like it's going to be about girl-on-girl action.
Well,
Sapphic
it's
love.
Complicated. now that I've found out how little I notice about queer undertones, there is a chance I've missed some. There's a chance I've missed some quite obvious red silk-lined purses. But who knows? No.
Tom won't be able to use that line because that comes out later.
Fine. It can just be for us here today.
You bought the book because you thought it sounded racy and like some erotica, but what did it turn out to be?
It's so short and so brilliant and so beautiful that I don't want to give it away. It starts with a cage underground, 40 women are trapped, being held by armed guards.
Oh, it sounds less sexy than the Gordon Ramsay cookbook.
Big time.
It's French, isn't it? It is
I
French.
don't. Is it?
Yeah.
Is
Someone was
it?
telling me about it.
Oh, I don't know.
You guys. Jessie was.
It's Belgian.
Oh, it's Belgian.
It's Belgian.
But it's written in French.
Oh, I didn't read it.
I'm pretty sure.
The French claim anything that's Belgian and sexy the same way the Australians claim
Tinnika.
anything from New Zealand. The Australians go, Russell Crowe, he's Australian. He's from New Zealand. No, he's Australian. And Lauren Elkin, do you have an I'm a Feminist but?
Oh, but now I feel like mine is really dumb. It's not as funny as
No.
I was just at home going like, well, I don't have any butts. I'm just a feminist.
They hear us. They hear us all the time. They just want to hear one from you because you're special and famous and fabulous and literary.
So it's not a funny one. And maybe you could dress it up and make it funny. I saw you revising back there that you started with something and then, anyway, whatever.
Yeah, you saw our process.
I'm very impressed.
It's like, what do you think of this? What about you?
Yeah, it was good. So mine was, I am a feminist. So I'm very tired.
Oh, this is the end of her career. Just tonight we've crushed
God.
her.
I'm feeling like Joe Biden up here.
I'm a feminist, but sometimes I reveal my truth.
I'm not one. It's going to come out now. Oh, dear.
I'm a feminist, but I don't think feminists always have to agree. That's it.
Lovely.
Well, I think that's very feminist.
Yeah. You've accidentally been double feminist.
That's very feminist. I think that's the most feminist thing you could say. I think feminists should not agree. Yeah. I think the whole point of feminism is it's breaking new ground about how we further get equality. If we agree that we've got the best strategy, then I would ask that we should look out the window and see how much it's working. And I think we should say we constantly have to be breaking it and making it in order to live up to the new challenge that the patriarchy is offering us, which today seems to be ever too frequent. If we look at what's happening with the American election, what's happened to this country in the last 15 years, my God. But you look at the American election, it's very, very frightening. So I think you are right on the money, Lauren, and I am.
Thank you very much.
That's why I'm so excited to have you here tonight. So I would like to plug the Guilty Feminist Book Club. If you are book club people, if you want to hear other authors talk about their books, it does have a feminist bent, but it also has a guilty bent, so as you can see. So we will always get an author and we'll always compare it to a feminist classic. So if you follow along with us, if you listen to the episodes as well, or you come out and see them live, you will feel like you've read a lot of feminist classics, even if you haven't. Because you'll be sitting at a dinner party and say, well, as Simone de Beauvoir said, and we'll read them for you. But if you'd like to read along, it's a great way for me to read books that I know I should have read, but I feel I haven't. And of course, Jess, who I'm not saying she hasn't read them. I'm just saying. I'm just saying she's been my co-host these last 2 times, and I love doing it with Jess because I thought that the co-host would not really read the books, and Jess has
gone deep.
Jess is committed to it, so I'm like, Jess, can you please come and do it again because you read the books. So I just mean I love having you. I don't mean, and also you haven't read the books.
I haven't. It's fair.
Jess, do you have anything to plug?
I do. I have a second series of my radio series on Radio 4 at the moment. It's called Sturdy Girl Club. It will all be on BBC Sounds. There are 2 series of it now. It's all a sort of stand-up, funny documentary-ish about women doing various unladylike sports. And I have a go at them and I interview some extraordinary people and read around it a lot. And yeah, so I'm really, really, really proud of them.
Doing Sturdy Girl stuff?
No. Yes, I did. I broke it doing gymnastics rather than Steady Girl stuff.
I
broke it doing something very ladylike. I'll have you know. Gymnastics, one of the... Anyway, yes.
One of the only sports women are allowed to do.
Yeah. And my tour show, Metal, is just coming to the end of a 6-month tour. It's been amazing. And the last 3 shows to sign it off are at the Edinburgh Fringe on the 9th, 10th and 11th of August. And I would love anyone who's coming to the Fringe to come and see it there, because I'm in an ambitiously big venue for 3 nights only. Please come.
I'm absolutely convinced you'll sell that out. We are also up at the Edinburgh Festival on the 11th, 12th and 13th of August. We're at King's Place on the 15th of July. If you're not able to get up to the Edinburgh Festival, we're going to do a mini Edinburgh Festival of feminist comedians and female comedians, to be honest, comedians. The kind of comedians we would expect the Guilty Feminist audience would like to see. And there's one episode of that, and the other episode is Kiri Pritchard McLean, Lem Sissay, and somebody else, special guest, talking about fostering.
Amazing.
And specifically about, because Kiri's foster caring now, and we're talking to an expert, and Lem about, who's also an expert, about foster care. So if you come that night, that's the 15th of July, you'll see the foster care episode. There'll be an interval and you'll see the big Edinburgh showcase. If you are going up to Edinburgh, it's a really good one to see, because you can go, oh, I liked that one, or we'll see the whole hour of that one. And if you're not, you'll feel like you have. And on the 8th of September, we will be at the London Podcast Festival. Come to that. It's going to be at King's Place as well. It's such a good time. You're book club people. You'll love the London Podcast Festival. It's right up your street. Lauren, what would you like to plug?
Oh God, just this book. I'll be in Burley Fisher in July. I'll be at the Edinburgh Literature Festival. I think on the 19th and 20th of August. So I'll be around just
around
talking
the same
about
time. We
things.
should hang out.
I would love that.
And it's just been so lovely to have your parents in the audience. I've never seen parents look more proud. It's like watching parents at a school concert or something. They're just like, oh my God, we made her. She's so clever. Have you come over from America are you on book tour at the moment for a number of events? Are they on tour with you?
They've come to a few events.
You're coming to a few events, yeah. Are you very proud? Yeah, I mean, I feel like crying just looking at you. So please come and buy 1 or more copies of the books, and we will sign them. I'll be signing mine.
I won't. That'd be weird.
Also, you haven't got an arm to sign at the moment, unless you're left-handed.
I could do my left-hand handwriting could pretend to be the ghost of Simone. if anybody is keen on that.
Listen, last time I did sign the feminist classic Erica Jong, because we signed it with thank you for coming to the first ever Feminist Book Club. So if you want a Guilty Feminist book for you or someone else for a present, you can buy that and I'll sign it. Or if you want any Guilty Feminist book, I think, but you translated that, so you should sign both of those. I don't think I should sign your book. But we'll have a selfie, whatever you want, as long as you buy one of Lauren's books. There's going to be 4 of these here a year. So 4 times a year, you read 2 books. And by the end of the year, you think, I've read 8 feminist books this year. And 4 of them were classics. And you're just going to be revving it at Christmas. You're going to be hacking right into that misogynistic uncle. You're going to be... all your girlfriends are going to be so impressed we're out having cocktails. And you're saying things like, Erica Jong. I mean, it's really interesting comparing her first book to her last book, and so on and so on. So... come along, come back for more Waterstone's Guilty Feminist book clubs. Thank you so much. We've been the Guilty Feminists. You've been wonderful. Big last round of applause for Lauren. Jess. Thank you. I've been Deborah Frances White. Good night. You have been listening to the Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances White. Guest co-hosts Jessica Fostekew and our very special guest Lauren Elkin. The recording engineer was Grundy Lazimbra. Music was by Mark Hodge. The producer was Tom Selinsky for the Spontaneity Shop. Thanks to Rachel Craftman, Gina Dicio, Zainab Mohammed, and everyone at Waterstones, as well as all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com. Whatever seems right and appropriate for you. Okay. Tom, how long have we got so that we can still fit in the signing and also a Q&A? We've got 18 minutes. Oh, there we are. There's a clock there, and that's facing me, and it's actually on a countdown, so that's really useful. Excellent. But I would like you to shout out the time every 5 minutes if I'd prefer that. That would be good.
Okay. I'm going to read a tiny bit of the beginning and then skip forward a little bit.
The Guilty Feminist is provided exclusively from Acast. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.